to the Coast2Coast Podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Camont. I'm very excited for episode 1. Lots I want to talk about. Starting a podcast because I am really passionate and really enjoy basketball. And I'm a huge fan of the Canadian college basketball scene, specifically the women's side of it. And I don't really have a place to talk about it, so I thought, why not do this? So that's kind of the gist. What we're going to do here is I'm just going to yap about basketball for some amount of time. We're going to hit a bunch of topics. I have a handful of segments I'm going to try, and we're just going to go. We're just going to see how this goes, and go from there. I'm catching up on some games that happened today. We're filming this late Tuesday, and catch up on Loyalist versus Seneca. That game's a blowout so far. Yeah, let's get into it. So, my initial thoughts of the season so far, across all 5 conferences, some pretty good basketball. Our first couple weeks super rusty and dominated by the full court press, seeing teams, high turnovers, poor shot selections, a lot of misses, a lot of long misses. And I think, some pretty sloppy play, but led to some really exciting games. I mean, we got an overtime game out in Keanu. I think that was either Medicine Hat or Bradcrest. Overtime game there. A bunch of really close games. So, an exciting season. I do think, across the board, the teams that were really good last season, I think with a couple exceptions, are still really good this year. If we're moving west to east, I think that the 4 best the teams that were really good in Pac West are still really good. I think maybe we were talking a little bit about the order there, but overall, I think those some more combination of VIU, Capilano, Columbia Bible College, and Douglas College, somewhere in there, those four teams are the best. I think respect-wise, you gotta give it to Columbia Bible College still. They retain most of their roster, add a little bit of talent, and after watching them live in person, they play like they think they're the best team. I don't know if they're the best team, but they play like it. And we'll get into this a little later when we talk about power rankings and ratings. But from the game I watched in person, season opener, and then watching their game since, they play like they know how good they are, which could be a good thing. VIU, I think their ceiling is maybe a little lower, but they got a lot of young talent, so no real lack of confidence there. And then Douglas and Capilano are loaded to the gills of talent. I think those 2 squads are probably more talented plus experienced with that combination than VIU, but that VIU squad year in year out is dominant. So those are top 4. I do think the bottom 3 teams in the Pac West, they're going to be there. Love the basketball, but those, we got strong teams at the top. We move into Alberta, and this is where I think there's some shakeup. SAIT does not look as strong as last year. St. Mary's does not look as strong as last year, though, a little caveat there. And I think, the teams that are really, I think that there's a huge gap in between the top teams and the bottom teams, and we see that in the first couple weeks. We see some really huge numbers. We open the season where St. Mary's blows out Northwestern Poly 100 and something to 30, and at halftime I think it was 60-4, 65. It was an insane spread. And we see a couple of big blowouts. Northwestern not having a fun time, and a couple of schools in the ACAC struggling. Here, I want to pull it up. Where are we looking? ACAC So, how many other winless squads? Lakeland, those are some tough games. And tough broadcasts. Lakeland, you're having a tough season. The broadcast is tough. No commentary, and that angle is brutal. Northwestern, no wins. Everyone else has at least one win. Ambrose looked good out of the gate. They did play in WP, so that, they get one win on the board. They looked really convincing, and then I've had a tough slate since. Moving into Ontario, I think the amount of games, the lack of games, I think, is driving me nuts. Because Pac West has played 8 games minimum. We have a couple squads with 10 games. The ACAC, we've got a considerable amount of games now. Teams are getting into the 7, 8, 9 games, thank goodness. But we've got teams with 3 games played in the Ontario Conference. We need to work. Let's just more. I want more games, more consistency. Anyways, taking a quick look at the standings there. Again, this is recording Tuesday night. I've not watched the games tonight, so I don't know updated scores. Durham, St. Lawrence at the bottom, 0 wins. At this moment, a handful of lossless teams as well, or undefeated squads, I guess is what we'd say, with Mohawk, Loyalist, and Humber. And I think that those squads, though they looked really good last year, I think look even better. I think we look back to last season, and if you had told me that Mohawk would have been the representative and wins the playoffs outright, I don't know if I would not have taken that bet. Algonquin looked really strong all year, and I even felt like Georgian was maybe like a sleeper second best team. Humber looked really good. Who else was really good last year? Niagara was pretty strong, I think. There were other teams. I would not have pegged Mohawk as the third best team. Even like I think last week of the season they squeaked in as the 15th national ranking, but they've looked incredible. They have had like a slightly below strength of schedule so far, but they're crushing the games that they play in, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But they look very good. Quebec, again, not enough games played. 5 games across the board, a couple teams with 4. Would love more of that. I actually think that some of these squads in Quebec, there's a couple squads I think are overrated, and then I kind of like the squads that are like struggling win-wise. Like I love Trois-Rivières and Montmorency. I like how they play. Trois-Rivières is 0-5, and I don't think they play like an 0-5 squad. Who did they play that I watched that I was really impressed? It was Lennoxville. I think it corresponds. I don't think Lennoxville is particularly good. And I watched Lennoxville squeak out a win against, I don't know the score. I don't remember the score, but they didn't play particularly well against Trois-Rivières. And I really liked the gameplay out of the Devils, I think is what they are. I really liked how they played. And I'm not impressed with Lennoxville so far. They're 3-1. Stat-wise, I don't know. They're on the rankings. So let's just get to it. Let's just jump to the power rankings. Since I keep referencing it, I got a lot of feelings about these. I don't love them, and part of me not loving it is why I've gone ahead and created my own ratings, which is a little different than power rankings, but jarring is how I felt when I saw the power rankings. So if we jump, we've gone 3 weeks of power rankings, the 4th, the 11th, and the 18th, and The breakdown is 3 from each conference. I tried my best to look and find why, like how they do their ranking or whatever. Couldn't find a concrete answer, but it looks like there's like a bit of a spread of like each conference gets 3 teams. Is kind of what it looks like. Maybe that's just coincidence through 3 weeks, but would be a weird coincidence. Also, I don't think that these rankings are great. I think that there's a couple teams each week that don't belong. So November 4th, we had 1 week of the Atlantic Conference, the Maritimes Conference. They had played just 1 week of games, I think, one weekend, and so everyone else had played a few significantly more games, especially the Pac West. And just a quick recap of that list. It's CBC, Saint Jean, TKU, Mohawk, MSVU, VIU, NAIT, Lennoxville, Humber, Holland, Capilano, SAIT, Vanier, Algonquin, and St. Thomas. And I think that there are a couple of teams on this list that, even at that point, were like 3-4 weeks into the schedule. I don't know why they are on the list to begin with. I think some of it is respect to last season. CBC getting the nod as the number 1 makes sense. And with St. Jean being number 2, those squads went to nationals last year. CBC wins it all. Same thing with the respect, I think, for Mohawk, MSVU, and VIU being up there. I think SAIT being on this list is a respect thing for this first week. I don't get it. They were not good. They lose a game that they were never in against Concordia, and then they had, I think, 1 win, 1 loss after that. I'm just not convinced. I think they beat the Lethbridge. Not convinced. They do not, spoiler, they do not end up on its top 15 rankings the next 2 weeks, and that makes sense to me. Vanier does not look. Vanier also being on this list doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Algonquin, I think, not enough games. It's a pretty fresh squad, and I don't think that they're the 3rd best team from Ontario, nor do I think that they were top 15, and they're not on this list going forward. Same thing with Holland. Lennoxville, I'm not convinced. And St. Thomas is good. I don't know if top 15 good, but they're good. And I think Humber is underrated. So going into the next week, notable additions: Concordia, St. Lambert, and Loyalist join. And I think those 3 squads should be on this list. Should St. Lambert? Maybe. I think so. Let me double check. No, I don't think St. Lambert. Like, they could be as the 3rd squad, I guess. I like Saint Foy better, and Saint Foy is not on it. And I think Saint Foy is better. So, Lennoxville being on this list, for Saint Foy not. I think Saint Foy has been a better squad. They show up on the next week. Concordia, I think, is very good. They've played like nobody, but they've shown themselves to be good. And I think Loyalist is completely underrated. And we'll touch into my rankings. So I don't know where I'm going to post it. Maybe I'll put it on screen in editing. But I went ahead and did a lot of math. So I came up with an equation to give me this 3 decimal point that just sort of tells me how good is each team at basketball. So it's relative to the teams they played against. So it's net rating or net efficiency plus your strength of schedule, and that produces this beautiful little number, 3-digit number. And so I then compile the list of all 54 teams and sort it by highest to lowest, and produced this rating and ranking. And I think some of the data is a little wonky. There's a couple teams I think their stats are inflated. I think it's just because of low sample size. So a team that I think is good, but not as good as my math shows is St. Mary's. St. Mary's has a killer opening couple weeks, where especially that 100-point win, I think inflates their efficiency, and they played enough teams that their strength of schedule is not garbage, and so their rating score, the highest you can get is 2. Their rating score is 0.854 on the November 11th point, and then when we get to the 18th, it's 0.82. I think they've just lost games since, but their efficiency, like close games, so their efficiency has not moved around a whole lot. And so they remain top 2 through these rankings, through the first 3 weeks of power rankings, with my ratings lining up with it. I think going forward with a little bit more data, this list will shake out a little bit. I think there's some teams that are really low. Like, I think that the Pac West teams are really low. I think it's just because they played more games. So some of their numbers have flattened out. That being said, though, I do think that the Pac West is a low efficiency conference. I think that they're better at defense than they are at offense. I think across the board. I think all those teams hang their hat on defense and at times grit their teeth through offense. Whereas we see a conference like the ACAC that I think, and the OCAA, respectively, that flourish on offense. And I think that is reflected in these rankings. The November 18th ratings. STMU, Loyalist, Mohawk, the King's University, Seneca, Humber, UAA, SAIT, Fanshawe. There is one school that is not Ontario, Alberta in the top 10. Saint Jean being number 1 overall, and I think they're the best team. I think they're the best team across the country on both sides of the ball, but specifically on offense. But outside of them, it is all Ontario and Alberta, and for my ratings, and I think that has to do with the fact that these are conferences that are more prolific on offense. We then see MSVU, STU out of the Maritimes, 11th and 12th, and then it didn't shake out. But our first Pac West team is VIU, and they're the 19th best team through my ratings, and then we got Capilano, Douglas, Camosun, CBC, all are bunched together. But I do think that style of conference shows up in my math. And I think as the season goes along, some of that will shake out. And kind of, especially once these more prolific offensive conferences play more games, especially the Ontario Conference, we'll see we'll see some of those Pac West teams slide up. But maybe we won't. I don't know. I have not looked historically at how my math would reflect in past seasons, mainly because trying to calculate net efficiency is miserable. But we'll go from there. Some notable differences in terms of how I'm seeing teams versus how these power rankings are. I think that there are a couple squads that are I like Columbia Bible College. And like I said earlier, they play like they know they're the best. I don't think that they've played the best. And so I think that'd be the difference between a rating versus a ranking, a power ranking, is that power ranking wise, we can conceive that Columbia Bible College is the best team because they won the national championship, they brought back the same squad plus a couple pieces, and they can only get better. They've lost one game to VIU, who they've never beaten before. They get a win off VIU at home, which is huge for the program. So they're just rolling. So I totally understand the number one spot. I don't think based off of current performance, they're the best team. I think that Saint Jean, who are a juggernaut on offense. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but their like the amount of possessions they get, free throws, just regular field goals. There are low turnovers, like relatively speaking, low turnovers, and a really efficient offense. I mean, their net efficiency, which is offensive efficiency minus defensive efficiency, is 0.569. For reference, here, let's see. For reference, do I have? For reference, so that puts Saint Jean at, was it the third best team? Or Saint Jean is the, oh, that's my ratings. Regardless, that they're the top end, right? We see other schools, like in Quebec, they're the best. Let's see, OCAA. If we're looking at net efficiency, there is no one in Ontario with the same efficiency. There's no one in Alberta. I think the only team in Alberta with the same net efficiency, no one in the Pac West. ACAC, I think maybe only the only team with the same efficiency is no one. Just no one. No one's close. No one's close on offense. And they're so much better at offense than people are at defense, and that people are at offense, that I think they're the best team. They should be the favorite to win it all. I think it's crazy to watch. They're a fun team to watch. I wish the broadcast was like a little crisper. And maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit, about some of the viewing experiences. But Saint Jean's the best team, and it kind of reflects in the power rankings. They've been number 2 the entire time. TKU, I don't know if they're the best team in Alberta. I think they've been very good. Mohawk has been the best team, I think, out of Ontario. MSVU, the best team out of Maritimes. And then they've got NAIT, Humber, VIU, Holland. Those teams are all good. I think teams being slept on, I think, and we'll get this into the teams / players I've enjoyed the most. I think Douglas is really underrated. I think Capilano is really underrated. I think Loyalist. I really like Fanshawe as well. I think those 3 squads specifically are super underrated. And I don't think Concordia as well. Like, Concordia has not played strong opponents. I think where did I have them? They dropped. Yeah, I have them as the 25th best team based off their ratings. But I think that's just because they've played weak teams. Like, Columbia Bible College is 29th. And they're a very good team. I think they've just not won efficiently, and that's why where they are. But Concordia's right around Douglas's efficiency, right around Capilano's, VIU's, and those are all very talented, very good teams. The eyeball test says that, or would tell you that those are very good teams. So I think Concordia is underrated as well, and so Medicine Hat as well. I'll throw them in there. They've had a couple of weird losses, but I think that Medicine Hat squad's pretty good too. There's some teams I think that should be in consideration for these rankings. I don't know how the power rankings really work in terms of who gets selected. I know that the different conferences have to submit stuff Monday or on Monday, and then the list gets compiled and submitted on Tuesday at some point. But those are some teams that I'd like to see maybe hat of the ring. Augusta Nantes as well, out of Alberta. They have been very good, and they have a couple good wins. They have a couple nice wins where they've been not just developing squads. I think it's the polite way to put it. Because UAA, they have a really nice win against St. Mary's most recently, which was a close game, and I like a team that. Like St. Mary's that has shown offensively to have it, a good win for Augusta Nantes. I'm butchering that for sure. Okay, that's it for the rankings. Truthfully, not too upset. I think if I were to do power ranking now, I don't know how I would be able to separate it. I think just critiquing the current power ranking works best for me. and producing my ratings, and continuing on like that. Not too choked about what the power ratings look like. I do think that some of these schools are a little high. I do think there's a couple schools missing, and I am curious about the distribution. If there is some weird hard cap in terms of the number of institutions per conference that is in this, would love to learn a little bit more about how these teams are picked. Moving on though to my next thing, our next segment that we're going to test out. I love. I'm not a big boxing fan, but I do think that boxing does something very fascinating, which is the lineal belt, which just is a fancy way of just saying that there is a championship title that goes back all the way to the first official boxing match, where the winner, we can trace a history of the sport of boxing and the heavyweight belt. All the way to the first match. And I took that idea and I have created conference belts and then a couple of divisional belts, but conference belts. So for example, we're going to keep track week by week, various conference belts. So for example, out in the ACAA in the Maritimes, the last year's champion was Mount St. Vincent, so they have the belt. They're undefeated, so they have not lost the belt. They have maintained their conference belt. We go to the ACAC out in Alberta, and this is where we have 3 belts. So we do have the conference belt, which SAIT earned by being the champion, going to nationals. They have the conference belt. We have the North Division belt and then the South Division belt. TKU, to start the season, the holder of the North Division belt, and then SIT, the South Division belt. With the conference belt, SIT loses their opening match to Concordia, who gets the belt. And Concordia goes several weeks, I believe, holding onto that belt until their second to most recent game, where they lose to Briarcrest. Briarcrest, who right now, Briarcrest is 4-3, but a 4-3 Briarcrest beats Concordia and has the conference belt. Going to SEIT, they're in the South Division. They've lost 3 games. However, they've only lost to one other South Division team, that being Lethbridge. So in a weird kind of way, Lethbridge, who is 4-4 and had a really rough start to the season, has the division belt for the South. TKU lost to NAIT, I think, in the opening weekend or the first couple games, and so NAIT now has the North Division belt. So kind of the concept of what we're doing here. Each week I'll highlight if we had a belt game and if it changed hands. Going into the Pac West, VIU, though not winning the national championship, did win the conference champion. They have the belt. They lose it in the second weekend, in the second game of the weekend, to Columbia Bible College, who only has one loss in the season, to VIU. And so they have the belt and have kept it since the last, I think, 3+ weeks they've had the belt. We move into Ontario, and this is another 3-belt conference. We have the conference belt that is held by Mohawk, who is still undefeated. We have the East belt, of which Algonquin held it going into the season. They did lose to Loyalist, and Loyalist has not lost since, so they keep the East belt. And then, as mentioned, Mohawk, who have not lost a game yet, still hold the West Division belt. I don't foresee those two teams losing. I haven't looked at the schedule too closely, but I don't foresee those two squads losing matches soon. We then go to Quebec, and Saint Jean had the belt They won. They win the conference last year. They have the belt. They're undefeated. And I would not be surprised. Here's my first really hot take of the podcast. I don't think Saint Jean is going to lose a single game. I think Saint Jean wins the national championship with 0 losses. That is my stamp it, record it. What are we? Half an hour into the podcast, give or take. First hot take. Aggregate it. Saint Jean's winning the national championship with 0 losses. I think this team's insane. And a juggernaut on offense, competent on defense. They play in a conference that is strong. So, Saint Jean. Okay. First hot take done. Let's move into. So that's it for the belt segment. We'll zhuzh it up as we go along. Maybe I'll have some fun props going forward. We're gonna round out, just close it out here with some teams and players that I've really enjoyed watching through these first month and a half of play. I think as someone who predominantly watched just Pac West basketball for the last decade, since playing in it myself. Shout out Langara. I had not watched a whole lot of other schools. I had watched a little bit of Alberta, primarily Canadian College, and that's really it. And so this season has been really exciting as I've watching conferences and teams and players I've not seen before. Probably the player that I've been most blown away with is Fanshaw's Ashlyn Anderson. She might be the best basketball player I've watched this season. Not like a complete game in terms of like ball handling and 3-point shooting and being able to do big person stuff, but she an impressive post player, whether that's back to the basket, face up, or as a roller. I have been wildly impressed. I think her combination of like footwork, hand placement, and then just like she's in the right places. She just like gobbles up rebounds, and I've been really impressed. I don't know if she'll win any like offensive awards. I think her teammate Mackenzie is maybe a more robust offensive player, but I think she is a strong contender for Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, Sheridan, not a particularly strong team, new coach, I believe, new system, young players, all that kind of stuff, a really developing roster. I watched a road game where Sheridan's at home, Vanshaw's on the road, and I don't know how many blocks Ashlyn Anderson got. She played less than 30 minutes, but I saw like Sheridan players drive into the paint and then circle out as she took 2 steps toward them or a half step towards them, and her ability to just like deter less confident players, huge. They'll win a lot of games that they should win, or against squads that are perceived to be weaker, just from her defensive ability. Like, she's not even having to like deflect or block shots, take charges, anything like that. Just her presence in the paint, I think, is enough for this Fanshawe squad to beat a lot of teams with sub 500 records. I think we do see Fanshaw's like shortcomings when they played Humber. It was a home game, and that was like a tough game to watch. They just couldn't figure it out. But Ashlyn Anderson, very impressed. She does. I think what I have enjoyed the most and what I found most impressive as someone who has played the post position is she has her hand up and her teammates throw her the ball to where her hand is, and keeps it up above her head. When she rolls, she has a hand. When she's in the post, she has a hand up. Like, she is not constantly, but pretty consistently telegraphing to her teammates, or projecting to her teammates, this is where I want the ball, pass me the ball there. And her teammates, for the most part, do a pretty good job of getting the ball on target. And so her great footwork and touch get to be highlighted because she's got this great target and her teammates are getting her the ball. Some more schools that I've been really impressed with, enjoyed watching. I think let's not be impressed. I think there are some more impressive squads than the 4 other schools I'm going to talk about. But I've really enjoyed watching Mount Allison play. I don't know I think it's just the combination of like shot selection, pace, some of their like sideline or their like end line out of bounds plays, not slobs, bobs, baseline out of bounds plays. I really like some of that set play action that they got. It's nothing fancy. I just think that they do a pretty good job at it. And especially through these first few weeks, like those set plays have been kind of sloppy across the board. And so seeing a team that does a good job at it has been fun to watch. St. Clair, I've really enjoyed St. Clair for a couple of reasons. One, they run a 1-3-1 defense a couple times. In the most recent win against Lambton, they ran in spots this 1-3-1 defense that I really enjoyed. It may have been a 2-3 masked as a 1-3-1. Regardless, I really enjoyed that switch up on defense. And then I like how they attack the basket. I'm going to butcher her last name, but Ava Proskos, I think maybe. Her specifically, really love how she attacks the basket. Maybe not the fastest at getting around the corner and past the defender's hips, but just barrels to the basket, and I've really enjoyed that. They've been a fun watch. And then next team I got here is Loyalist. Undefeated helps. Winning games is enjoyable to watch. I watch any team that wins games. But I really loved watching Loyalist last season. I did watch a couple of their games to prepare for this season. This is a really smart team. They are not the most athletic. Their combination of zone defense, man-to-man defense, they're not the fastest or the quickest. Their lateral movement maybe is not the best, but they're in the right spot, in the right time, constantly. And like a suffocating defense without being like particularly like dominating in like an athletic sense. Like I think Humber is an elite defense that is physically imposing. I think, especially like point of entry defense, whereas like Loyalist is not particularly intimidating from a defensive standpoint. But I just think that they like are super smart, super cerebral, get to their spots, deter a lot of open lanes that look open when the offense gets the ball, but they put one dribble down and now they get swallowed up. So I've really enjoyed watching them play. And then Douglas College, I'll go out west, Douglas College, which is a really talented squad. I think opening weekend they had like a weird. They played Capilano back-to-back games, and it was like a weird weekend. I credit that to rust. Their first game was competitive and they beat Capilano, and then they get like blown out. They crawl it back so the end score doesn't look too bad, but the first half was like a no contest. Like Capilano just like dog walked them in the first half. But since that weekend, Douglas has looked really clean. I think, I don't know how to rank talent. Like, I think, they're somewhere in between the first and the third most talented squad in the Pac West. I just feel like they're oozing with talent. Like, defensively, they do a lot of the same things I see in Loyalist, except they are, like, physically intimidating. I think Lauren Clements could be back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year. There's a couple other people in their squad that could be up for awards. Mackenzie Delfont, I think she's played incredible, and I really like what she's done on the defensive end as well. Again, as someone who's not necessarily a shot blocker, but deters a lot of shots, gets into the lane really well. So, like, this Douglas squad's pretty clean defensively, gets out in transition. I think that they've been a lot of fun to watch. It does help their schedule. They've played some interesting, like in the Pac West, they've played almost everybody. I think the only team that they haven't played is Columbia Bible College. Yeah, Capilano, Lingero, Okanagan, VIU, Camosun. Yeah, so they just haven't played CPC, and that's a game I really want to see. I don't know when that's next on the schedule. Maybe it's this weekend. I'd have to check, but that's a matchup I'm really excited to see, as those are maybe our two most talented squads. Throw Capilano in there as the third. So really excited to see what that looks like. Speaking of Capilano, they've not played Columbia Bible College either, so that's like an interesting matchup. Oh, I don't think Douglas is playing this weekend. Maybe it's Capilano versus CBC then. But regardless, those squads haven't played either. Excited to see what that looks like. VIU took care of business against Capilano in pretty convincing fashion. At home, but convincing fashion. We'll note the travel there. We got some mainland teams that got to travel to VIU and Camosun. They're on the island. You have to take a ferry. It's a pretty taxing process. So I do think that those are real home court advantages. Same thing with Okanagan. It's not come through this season, as Okanagan has been a relatively weak team. They've got a really excellent player. I'm blanking on her name. A guard who's just at like 19 points a game, really laying it up for them. But their home court advantage has not really shown through. Whereas I think having to come to the island to play, I think is a real advantage. Like Camosun's win percentage is not good. I think they've won 25% of their games. 25% of the games. But those home games have been close. Like Douglas went to Camosun most recently, and I think for 3 or 4 quarters, those were like close games. Game 1, I think, was maybe a 5-point spread with like 3 minutes to go. So, and that's a Douglas team that has beaten everybody functionally, has beaten everybody. And so, like, they go 1-1 with VIU, 1-1 with Capilano, handle Lingera, blow out Okanagan at home. So, Douglas is a very good squad, very talented, well-rounded. They've got a coach who's been there forever, has won a championship in the last 3 years, like a conference championship in the last 3 years. If I'm them, I'm feeling pretty good going forward and being a legitimate title contender, not just in the Pac West, but in the national championship contender. I think they should be in consideration. There are 4 squads in the Pac West, I think, could go to nationals. I think I would love, this is maybe a topic for another day as we're getting close to that 45-minute mark. And I don't want to ramble too much episode 1. But something I want to look into and maybe talk about going forward is expanding the nationals. 8 teams is great. I would love to see more. Right now, with how it's set up, like, we get at least 1 squad from each conference, a host school, and then the 2 best performing conferences get 2 slots. So like last year, it was the Pac West and the ACAC get 2 each, which I think is great. I would love 12 total teams and add Manitoba, because they only have 3 teams in their conference and they don't get represented nationals. Anyways, we'll talk about that episode 2 maybe. We'll talk about that episode 2. We'll spoiler into what next week's podcast topic for next week's podcast. But I think, to my point, I think early in the season there are a lot of hopeful teams. There's a lot of teams that are playing really good basketball. I think we're already kind of seeing who the best teams are, and I feel like there's a very clear line, or this very clear line is forming in between those that are competitive and those that are not competitive, especially in our smaller conferences. That being Pac West, Quebec, RSEQ, and then the Maritimes. Like those three conferences, I think there's a clear line. Hey, these are our top 3-4 schools. These are our bottom schools. I feel like that's very clear. I feel like where we have not seen a whole lot of separation quite yet is in Ontario and in Alberta, where we got a lot of schools just in the mud, which is honestly where we want to be. We're middle to end of November. It would be boring if everything was decided by now. So we'll wrap up there. I think that's a good spot. I'm very excited for these upcoming games. I've got a couple more games tonight to watch before I go to bed, and maybe I'll watch them while I edit. Loyalist Seneca's finishing up. Loyalist dominating. I'm only in the third, and it's like 60-30. So pretty confident to say Loyalist continuing their win streak there. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm going to try and upload once a week. If I have more content ideas, I might end up posting more than that. But for right now, the goal is Wednesday morning, new post. So excited to do that. Excited to see where this goes and talk more basketball. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, all that jazz. Thank you so much.